I'm now starting the affirmative case. John Stuart Mill once said, "The only purpose for which power can be rightfully exercised over any member of a civilized community against his will is to prevent harm to others." This applies to my argument because the public health stance aims for prevention and solutions for the abuse of illegal drugs. The harm principle is extremely relevant when deciding how to handle the situation, and I affirm that the abuse of illegal drugs ought to be treated as a matter of public health, not criminal justice. The harm principle supports the intervention of a person's activities only when they're going to cause harm to society or themselves. My value today is public welfare. Public welfare can be defined as the benefit for the public or the good of the population. In the context of this debate, it can be seen as which option would benefit the majority of the people the most. The negative effects that illegal drugs have on the user can easily shift, and the population will also show negative effects. Therefore, it's the public's job to ensure the greater good is always upheld for everyone. My criterion is consequentialism. According to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, the theory believes whether an act is morally right depends only on the consequences of that act. By following this theory, we can only determine the justification of an act based on the consequences expected by the person. We must use the criterion of consequentialism to determine the positives and negatives of using the public health approach or the criminal justice system. My first contention is the criminal justice system covers up the behaviors and does nothing to help the situation. My first subpoint is the criminal justice system ignores recidivism. Recidivism is the relapse of criminal behavior following conviction and releasement. The Bureau of Justice Statistics have studied recidivism and found that within 3 years of release, about 2/3 of released prisoners were rearrested, in which 79.6% were drug offenders. The public health system tries to help these people and reduce the number of arrests, but a majority of these illegal drugs are addictive and come with many negative consequences. And because it causes harm to them, the harm principle must be applied, and intervention is necessary. The criminal justice system covers up this problem and puts it on hold, which in the long run increases the rate of recidivism. My second subpoint is the criminal justice system, in addition to not solving any problems, also creates them by interfering in people's rights, especially in the cases of medical uses. Marijuana is considered an illegal drug, and in July 2012, the American Society of Addiction Medicine released a statement saying that all cannabis-based products, and cannabis delivery devices should be subject to the same standards applicable to all other prescription medication. In the same statement, they discouraged state interference in the federal medication approval process. Abusing medical drugs includes lying about symptoms, giving prescriptions to patients who will provide the drug for outside users, and the doctors who overprescribe to increase sales. The government is trying to find ways to keep the drugs out of the hands of the patients, which interferes with their treatment and overall well-being. Therefore, the criminal justice system would not be helping anyone, and it should be considered a matter of public health, so the abusers can seek rehab and overcome their addiction, not just be punished for something they cannot help. Public welfare can be achieved by public health organizations who strive to prevent future drug abuse and help patients seek treatment because drug abuse has been directly linked to homelessness and domestic violence. Actually treating the addicts instead of locking them up relates to consequentialism due to the diverse consequences that each has on the user.
I will now start the cross-examination. If your criterion is consequentialism, then how is it justified for the drug abusers to not face any consequences for their actions like going to jail?
Well, by applying the value of public welfare, the benefit of the greater good, the consequence of being in jail for the abuse of illegal drugs does not have any positive outcomes. The abuser will most likely not get any form of treatment, and the facts tell us that they will probably go back to jail soon after their releasement of the same thing. This cycle of drugs and prison time eats away our taxpayers' dollars for an indefinite period of time. If the tax money went towards treatment programs and focusing on prevention, public welfare can be achieved for all people in society.
What about the crimes that these people do under the influence of the illegal drugs? Crimes are definitely a matter of criminal justice, so how is it justified for these crimes to go unnoticed?
The use of illegal drugs itself is a victimless crime. I'm not arguing that the crimes done under the influence go unnoticed. I'm arguing that the use of only the illegal drugs be considered public health. My criterion of consequentialism states that the justification of an act comes from its consequence, and since the use of only the drugs has no consequence on anyone but the user, it should be considered a matter of public health.
How is the public health system supporting public welfare when in fact it costs way more to go to a public health program rather than programs in prison?
Public welfare is all about achieving the greater good for all people in society, not just one. Taxpayer money gets funded into prisons, not privately owned treatment centers. Many programs are very accessible and might not even cost a dime. In the long run, attending a rehab center costs way less than it would to fuel an addiction. Those who are addicted often quit their jobs and pour thousands of dollars into their addiction. Prisons, on the other hand, are what eats away at tax money. A study done by the Huffington Post found that prisoners receive more than half of the tax money than public school students do. If you ask any taxpayer what they would rather spend their money on, a public school student trying to receive an education or a drug addict in prison, most likely they would choose the student. The best way to achieve public welfare is to make the abuse of illegal drugs a matter of public health and not criminal justice.
I'm now going to start my negative case. I will argue that the abuse of illegal drugs should not be treated as a matter of public health but criminal justice. John Locke once said, "The end of law is not to abolish or restrain, but to preserve and enlarge freedom. For in all the states of created beings capable of law, where there is no law, there is no freedom." If laws become broken relating to the use of illegal drugs, there must be consequences from the government to maintain the freedom and justice they provide for us. My value is justice. Justice is defined as the maintenance or administration of what is just, especially by the impartial adjustment of conflicting claims or the assignment of merited rewards or punishments. In the context of this debate, we are arguing if the concerns of the public justify the government's violations. My criterion is reciprocity. According to Merriam-Webster, it is a mutual exchange of privileges. This applies to our topic because the government gives us freedom, and in return, citizens of the United States of America pay taxes. My first contention is mass production of medication decreases profits and ends research. If companies are no longer able to have a patent on their product, they will not make money. Patents protect the products that companies produce on their own. Without these patents, anyone will be able to mass produce the medication and sell it at a lower cost to run the original patent-protected company out of business. This act violates Thomas Locke's philosophy of having freedom under the government and maintaining that freedom. If companies are no longer able to have a patent on their product, they will now be able to continue and conduct research for new medications. Because of patents no longer being enforced, companies will no longer be able to experiment and discover new and better medication for illnesses. Major corporations such as the FDA and CDC will have no ability to conduct future research and protect our society. Tax money paid by citizens helps fund government corporations, so my criterion of reciprocity applies here. Americans put their faith in the government to protect them in return for their tax money. My second contention is patents help protect and manage who is producing the medication. Patents protect others from making or producing something. If someone were to violate the patent because the government allowed it, they would be violating the patent. The government would not have violated it because they did not make or produce the patent-protected medication. Locke believes that while the government gives us the right to freedom, we must follow the laws that are given in order to maintain our freedom. If we do not follow the laws of patented products, then our right to freedom will be taken away by the government. My third contention is, by treating the abuse of illegal drugs as public health, that would be legalizing them and making them more available to the public. If people who abused illegal drugs did not go to jail for the use of drugs that have previously determined all illegal substances, we would be making it legal. Making drugs like cocaine and heroin legal would have detrimental consequences, so by using the public health approach, illegal drugs wouldn't even exist anymore because the laws would not apply for the consequences of usage. The criminal justice system aims to strengthen the laws already in place and punish people who disobey them. My value of justice is extremely relevant here because it is unjust to let broken laws go unpunished. Maintaining the laws will ensure a civilized nation and prevent future crimes from happening due to the consequence of jail time. The resolution specifies illegal drugs, which is already a matter of criminal justice and not public health. Overall, the abuse of illegal drugs should be treated as a criminal justice because no medication companies would not make any profits and no longer be able to supply us with no new research. Patents on medication makes it illegal to spread the drugs obtained by the user. And lastly, because not following through on the laws already in place means that illegal drugs would likely become legalized if they were treated as a matter of public health.